yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Most of you know that because you probably check out some of the other shows like the daily Ross Tucker football podcast, about 25 to 27 minutes or less, making sure you know everything going on in the National Football League. Tuesdays, by the way, Power Rankings Tuesday, where I let you know exactly where I think every team in the NFL stacks up. Fantasy Feast drops on Wednesday and Thursday. That's the show that's so nice. We do it twice. Love that one. A lot of people listen or watch the Even Money Betting Podcast, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Love Even Money. Love the huge week we had last week. That was amazing. Hopefully we can finish strong tonight with that Chiefs game that they take on the Bucks tonight on Monday Night Football. This podcast, one of my favorites, a couple of different reasons. Number one, my co-host Emory Hunt is the man. He's my brother from another mother in terms of his passion, his work ethic for the sport of football. I love the dude, always have. Check him out on social media like I do at FBall Game Plan. On Twitter, I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We're at Ross Tucker Pod. You can also check him out on YouTube. You can see if you're watching on YouTube, he's got the shirt to prove it. He's the czar of the playbook. I've been with this guy at college football coaching conventions, and people walk right by me, just shoo me out of the way to get a chance to talk to the czar of the playbook. Football Game Plan on YouTube. He also has the biggest and best draft guide that I'm aware of, quite frankly, footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. His name is Emory Hunt. The other reason why I love the show is kind of like 3 podcasts in one, right? In 26 minutes, maybe, I don't know, 25 minutes, we're going to talk about the biggest games in college football. We're going to get Emory's picks against the spread, and I chime in with my thoughts as well at times. And we're going to hear about the 2 best prospects that we should watch in that game from an NFL draft perspective. Speaking of the bets, how about the weekend for Emory Hunt? He won them all. He was 3-0 for the week. Now, this week we'll have some more bets, but last week, 3-0. So he's 20-24 on the year. He took Ohio State -4 against Penn State. They beat him 20-13. And I'll say this too about that game, Emory. You know, Penn State fans, as you might imagine, very frustrated. I think Franklin's 1-9 or 1-10 against Ohio State. And I get that. It's not even really about the fact, Emory, that they lost this game. It's that this is how every Penn State-Ohio State game goes, where it's like a close one-score game. And at the end of the game, Penn State fans can be like, oh my gosh, this play or that play, and yet it doesn't work. The thing I would say, as it relates to your bet, Penn State also got a pick 6. And Will Howard fumbled the ball into the end zone when he was going in for a touchdown that took more points off the board for Ohio State. So what I would really be frustrated about if I were a Penn State fan is that you get a pick 6 and you have the quarterback for the other team fumble the ball as he's going in for a touchdown. You have to win that game. I mean, you have to win that game. Honestly, Emory, it might not have been that close otherwise. That was a nice bet for you, laying the 4 points with Ohio State.
And they were up 10-0. So at the end of the day, like, you had the lead, you had the momentum, you had Gus Johnson on the call. I feel like you could hear him from the press box without the microphone on the field. So you had all that energy. And for it to end the way it did, you know, inside the 5, not able to score, that has to be heartbreaking. But I will offer this for Penn State fans, because I've said this all throughout the week on CBS Sports HQ and leading up to this particular ball game. Losing this matchup, obviously you don't want to lose any game. but this may be the best thing for Penn State because now you don't have to worry about playing in the Big Ten championship game. You can sit back and get into the postseason if you run a table with 11-1 record. You get everything you want. Not only do you get into the postseason, you probably get to host a playoff game. How cool is that?
Wow. That'll be interesting. Really, I mean, that would be awesome. Awesome if they
Can
did
you
that.
imagine? Well, I know it didn't play out this way, but we was talking about this Saturday morning before the game. It was like, man, what if Pitt wins? Can you imagine a Penn State Pitt?
No,
game?
no. That would be insane. All right, yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, there were a bunch of losses by teams. Iowa State lost, Navy lost. I mean, a bunch of teams in the mix that really could not afford to lose. All right, your next bet. Emory took Texas Tech and the 14.5 against Iowa State. Emory, they won outright. They beat them outright. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I love that you took the 14.5, but they beat them outright.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. I just thought they would keep it close because how Texas Tech can score. But Iowa State, we talked about it last week, was flirting with a loss for a while. And now that just cracked open the door for a monumental matchup this weekend versus Colorado, and for Colorado to potentially find a little way to get to the Big 12 title game. And we know, Ross, we both work in TV, that television wants Colorado in the postseason if they can get close enough, because they know that will bring eyes, ratings, and subsequently money.
Yep. I had a chance to do that Colorado game earlier in the year. That was a big win for them against Colorado State, who I think might be bowl eligible now.
Yeah.
All right. How about this call by you, Emory? Another one. You took South Carolina as underdogs. You took the 3.5. They won outright 44-20. They absolutely blew out Texas A&M, who was the apple of everybody's eye after that LSU win. So 3-0 for the week. What are your thoughts on that South Carolina A&M game?
Folks have to understand what to look for in a letdown spot. If you looked at how A&M beat LSU, it was a lot of momentum type wins, right? The backup quarterback came in, the run game finally started to pop, the defense got inspired. But when you look at that game juxtaposed to the matchup against South Carolina, I was like, there's no way South Carolina is going to lose this game because they are arguably the best defense in the SEC, combined with the fact that we still, like, as much as we like the A&M game and how they beat LSU, it was basically run game and 2 passes. So are you going to expand the passing game for Marcel Reed? Because if not, you just made it easier for South Carolina to stop, and which they did, and that's why that score looked like the way it did.
Emory again was 3-0 on the week. He's 20-24 for the season. We'll move on to the games this week. Emory's picks are presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Emory, let's start with a big one in the SEC. It's Georgia at Ole Miss. Georgia's laying 2.5. What do you think?
One, this is about which Georgia team is going to show up. Can they start the game, how they tend to scramble, find a way, and finish a game? And that's going to be the biggest key for the Bulldogs, because the one opponent that you can't have a slow start against is this Ole Miss team, especially coming off what we saw them do to Arkansas. And Jackson Dart, the quarterback you want to keep an eye on. I think he threw, 5 or 6 touchdown passes last weekend. Very much does a great job in throwing a deep ball. And he sees, one thing he does really well from a scouting perspective, he quickly identifies the one-on-one matchup. So him seeing a one-on-one opportunity, he's going to take it. So if you're Georgia, you got to find a way to kind of disguise it and hold it until the last possible moment, because Dart is someone that not only can beat you with his arm, but he's also a very good athlete and get out there and run as well. So he's the one prospect to watch. And, he can kind of move himself up the rankings in these draft people's eyes based on how he plays in this ball game. Because we know Michael Williams, the edge rusher for Georgia, is starting to turn it on. He's starting to look like the guy that everyone expected him to be starting the season. He's healthy. He's getting out there. He's doing what he has to do. And so those are the two biggest prospects obviously you could talk about a litany of players on both sides of the ball. We've done that all throughout the preseason when we spotlighted these two teams in these matchups. But for this game, those are two guys I'm gonna be keeping my eye on. And as far as the point spread, it's tough, man. I'm gonna say because Georgia is just like how I talked about Iowa State flirting with that loss. I'm gonna say Ole Miss plus the points here because I can't trust Georgia's offense to consistently do things that they need to do to beat an Ole Miss that's going to keep their foot through the pedal on the floor. It's going to be like Flintstones. Their feet are going to be on the ground. They're going to try to make sure they do what they have to do to blow out Georgia. So I like Ole Miss here.
You know, a couple thoughts there. First of all, Carson Beck is like nuking his draft stock this year. I mean, it has been bad. You know, it makes you think when you see what Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey are doing in the NFL right now, it's like, yeah, no wonder he had such good numbers last year. You have two guys that get open every play, and you know they're reliable and you can throw it to them. I think, listen, he still made a lot of good throws, but he benefited greatly, I feel like, from having those two guys that are off to great starts in the NFL. So that's one thing that jumps out to me about the game. The other thing is, you know, you don't ever hear about Jackson Dart for the NFL. I don't know why is he not? Is it arm strength? Like, what is it? I mean, he puts up great numbers. He can run too. Like, what's the thing holding Jackson Dart back?
It may be arm strength per se. However, I do feel like this is an issue with a lot of folks in regards to talent evaluation, and we saw this we've seen this with Shedeur Sanders, right? And when he was at Jackson State, a lot of people have an issue separating the talent from the situation, or in this particular case, the quarterback from the offense. Yes, they look at Jackson Dart statistically and say, oh yeah, he's putting up these crazy numbers, but they kind of attribute it to Lane Kiffin offense. So you got to be able to separate the two and recognize the talent of the individual.
Yeah, by the way, I'll lay the 2.5 with Georgia. And the only reason why I say that is because it feels like Georgia in big games steps up and plays well. And Ole Miss, it just seems like they don't. It just seems like if I'm just going based on their history in big games, give me the dogs on the road. What about on the road? Michigan is at Indiana. Indiana, Emory, is laying 14 points. 14 points against the defending national champ, Michigan Wolverines. What a rough year it has been for the Wolverines.
You know, shout out to Indiana and head coach Kirk Cignetti because he understands the severity of the moment and the significance of why they have to go out there and do what they've done to everybody, which is blow them out, because they have to. They know the CFP wants nothing more than to not have Indiana in. Not because Indiana isn't playing great ball, not because Indiana is in a Power 4 conference. It's because Indiana is not a brand name. They will use any type of way to slight Indiana. So for that, I'm laying these 14.5 points. I like the fact that Indiana understands they are the villain in this situation and no one wants to see them do well. And I like that they've taken that approach and how they coach offense, how they play defense. They're good on both sides of the ball. And Curtis Rourke is the number one CFL prospect in the draft, in the CFL draft. And he's been playing phenomenal football. Came back from the thumb injury, played well against Michigan State. Think about it, they were down 10-0 against Michigan State and went on a 47-point run. That's Indiana. And Michigan's passing game came up big last weekend, joined the Millennium, you know, with the way they threw the football against Oregon, but it is not enough. I don't think it's sustainable. I like Indiana here.
Wow, laying the 14 with Indiana. You know, they have been rolling people. That's another one, though. I think I'd go the other way. I think I would take Michigan. Indiana hasn't even had a close game yet. Have they?
No. They've been beating the brakes off everybody. And
yeah, that's why I would take – I think they're due. They're due for a close game. I would take Michigan and the 14 points. How about wow, that was wild, by the way, Emory, for my game last Saturday where found out like an hour and a half before the game that Bryson Daly wouldn't be playing for Army, their Heisman candidate quarterback who's having a terrific season. So we don't know if they'll have him back or not as they take on North Texas. I think they have North Texas and then another bye and then Notre Dame. So you wonder if whatever he's dealing with, if maybe they'll try to get through that next bye. But they just had a bye. I mean, he just played in their last game against East Carolina and was healthy. Then they had a bye, and then he didn't come back for the game against Air Force. So whatever he's dealing with is obviously it's an issue. Army's laying 5.5 at North Texas with nobody really knowing the status of Army's quarterback, Bryson Daly. I will say this, Emory. I know you're going to talk about him. Their running back, Kanye Udo, he's the real deal. He's the best running back they've had since I've been doing their games. You know, I met with him on Friday, and he said, I said, where else did you almost go, and why did you pick Army? He's like, Nebraska, Rutgers. I was like, this guy's kidding, right? Like nobody with like Nebraska and Rutgers offers picks Army. And he told me, I wanted the opportunities after college, and I guess his teammate in high school, Brady Small, Army center, was going there. So I Googled it. He had offers to like Syracuse, West Virginia. Like he had a bunch of offers and picked Army instead. And when you watch him run, you can see why.
Exactly. And we spotlighted him on a preseason show on Inside College Football, and watching how he runs, good vision, good footwork, good balance. He's playing the B backwards, the fullback in that option, but you can easily see him being a tailback at any program of those that you mentioned, because he has all of those traits, and he's only a sophomore. So when you have that type of talent choosing to go to Army, there's no surprise that this team is that dominant in the way that they are. Now, this will be a challenge against North Texas because of the way they run offense and how they're able to, push the tempo, push the pace. But it's like great offense versus great defense, and that's where Army has the advantage, because people underestimate how good and disciplined assignment sound this defense is. There are very, very few busts on defense. I'm laying these points with Army. They understand, like Indiana, the moment. People want them to lose based off what Navy did against Notre Dame, and Army understands, like, hey, man, we got an opportunity here, a big one out in front of us if we take care of business. I don't see them losing sight of the mission, pun intended. I'm laying the points with Army, and Kanye Udo is a tremendous tailback.
Yeah, their offensive line is playing well for Army, and Air Force has a pretty good defense. Air Force was ready for it, and they still did. I'll be curious to see if North Texas can slow down this rushing attack for Army and the way they're running the ball. It is funny, though. You're talking about the two different teams. They always say styles make fights. Wow, these teams have very, very different styles. North Texas up-tempo, throwing it. Army, they take as much time off the play clock as they can, typically. They're going to keep North Texas on the sideline, or at least try to. All right, so far, Emory is taking the points with Ole Miss, 2.5, but he's laying 14 with Indiana, laying 5.5 with Army. Let's get to Colorado at Texas Tech. Colorado is laying 3 right now, Emory.
Yes, lay these points with Colorado. That's number one. Talk about staying around, hanging around, and finally get that opportunity that you wanted in this ball game. And I love the fact that they understand now. We talk about this being a common theme for the show. Hey, man, this is your moment. This is what you asked for. This is why you lift all them weights, like Bill Parcells said, right? And so I like Colorado to come in here and take care of business, because quite honestly, we talk about the offense on both sides, but it's the defense for Colorado that has been the story of the season. They're doing a great job versus the run, which is big in this game because Taj Brooks is a fantastic pro back that they'll face against Texas Tech. We talked about him last weekend. And also, they have 2 of the best players in college football. And I said 2 of the best players in college football, one being a Heisman Trophy candidate who should win it. I say give him 2 because he plays on both sides of the ball. He could win a Heisman as a receiver or as a cornerback. Give it to Travis Hunter, who I still feel like is a cornerback at the next level because of the ball skills and the ability to take away that one side of the field. And we talked about Shedeur Sanders ad nauseum. The good part about this show, Ross, we've talked about Shedeur Sanders since he was at Jackson State. So we saw it before everybody. because we are able to separate the talent from the situation. Now, Travis Hunter in this ball game, I think, will have one of those Heisman moments that you want to see. Shedeur make Shedeur-like throws consistently like he does every game. And how about Jimmy Horn, the receiver? When you look at his speed and look at how well he controls his body, I would even say, what makes him an NFL draft prospect is the fact that he can return kicks. Think Kavontae Turpin. That's what you're getting with a Jimmy Horn at the next level.
Ooh, that's a good comparison, Emory. I like that. I like when you have current NFL comparisons like that. Yeah, I mean, the craziest thing about Colorado, and I talked about it during the game, they already had Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr., and then to get LeJontay Wester from FAU and Will Shepherd from Vandy, I mean, that's super impressive. Let's talk about the last game. BYU, by the way, I would probably lay the 3 with Colorado as well. I would join Emory with that because I think Texas Tech, it's like they got their big win last week against Iowa State. Now maybe they'll have momentum and they'll continue it, but that just doesn't seem to be the way it is with the college kids. So what about BYU? Speaking of laying points, now they're laying 4 at Utah. This is a huge game. These people hate each other. Like there's times where it's like, no, it's a good rivalry. No, there's other times where they really legitimately do not like each other. BYU's laying the 4 at Utah, Emory.
This is a monumental game in the Big 12. And Kyle Whittingham and Utah is having an unprecedented down season like Troy Calhoun and Air Force is. 2 of the best coaches in the sport. And their teams are not just doing well this season, dealt with a lot of injuries Utah has. But Mekhi Bernard is phenomenal as a tailback. We'll give them a chance. But you talk about realizing the moment. BYU is just playing great ball. And then when you rewind back to them versus SMU, and who knew that was going to be a huge game, spinning it forward. So I tend to think BYU, I'm going to lay these points to BYU because, again, once you get to this level, you realize you can't avoid a letdown. They've gotten too big to fail. And so because of that, I'm laying these points with the Cougars here. And I love the 2 cornerbacks, Jacob Robertson and Marquis Thomas. Both of these dudes are a big reason why they've been able to cover on the back end. And their defense is really good versus a inconsistent offense in Utah. I like the Cougars' chances here.
This would be it's kind of like the Air Force Army game I did Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a huge win for Utah if they could get it. I would say to the BYU kids after they get this win to drink some Labatt Blue Lights with your friends, live life to the power of we to celebrate. I'm not sure they're allowed to. Are they allowed to have beer? Anyway, I am, and I always enjoy it responsibly. Beer, delicious beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Speaking of that, Emory, you'll appreciate this. So I'm sure you've seen it before on my social media. At Army, they have this incredible Lichtenberg tailgate, okay, where it's like I eat 2 steak sandwiches, 3 brats. It's unhealthy. It's not good, but it's just so good. I eat it. Here's the thing. I put my bag down next to the building, went over, I'm eating this stuff. Somebody's talking to me. I start to go, somebody else starts talking to me. By the time I got back to my bag, there was 5 guys from the Secret Service and the bomb squad around it, and they had sliced it open. It was an unattended bag, and it's Army Air Force, and it's right outside the stadium. And I said, oh, guys, that's mine. I went over, I was like, oh, that's mine, guys. And I said, you sliced it open? I was like, and they said, yeah, that's protocol because pulling the zipper could be the trigger that has the detonation go off, the device go off. So, dude, here, I don't know if you can see my bag. They totally sliced.
Yikes.
Right there. I'm showing on YouTube. They sliced it right through. Even the front thing, in case this had something, they sliced this. I was like, my whole thing is how long does a bag have to be unattended to get the slice treatment? And what am I supposed to do when I got food in both hands?
There was 2 things, Ross. They probably was about to fold you up like a pretzel if you came over there too quickly. And second, they probably watched you put the bag down to go eat, and it was like they could have just asked, "Hey, man, it's your bag."
Hey, lesson learned. Other than that, hey, hope you guys kick some butt this weekend. Follow Emory's picks. The keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.